So, what are the benefits of recycling?
There are a lot of benefits to recycling, environmental benefits, economic benefits. Some of the environmental benefits are reducing our consumption of natural resources, reducing pollution, saving energy, saving landfill space. Some of the economic benefits of recycling include reducing our disposal costs, creating jobs, creating sustainable economy, things like that.
Okay. And so, what positive impacts does recycling have on the environment?
The first thing it does is by recycling materials and keeping them out of the landfills, we save space. We don't have to create new landfills. We don't have to cut down forest for space for incinerators and waste treatment facilities and things like that. So one of the first benefits is saving their space, and then also saving natural resources. Like I said, if you take an aluminum can and recycle it, you don't have to mine more aluminum ore, bauxite, and you don't have to transport that from across the country or across the globe to manufacture a new can. So there's a lot of energy, fuel, pollution reduction, and again, reduction in the use of natural resources.
Mm-hmm. How can we reduce the amount of waste we produce every day?
Well, the easiest way to reduce the amount of waste that you produce is actually to consume less, use less, and reuse the things that you do buy and purchase. So rather than buying a plastic bottle of water every time you get thirsty, use a refillable pitcher or some sort of reusable water bottle, things like that. Basically just cutting down on the amount of things that you use that are disposable and replacing them with durable goods and items.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how does the reduction of waste lead to an environmentally sustainable economy?
Reducing the amount of things we throw away. Repeat the question.
How does the reduction of waste lead to an environmentally sustainable economy?
Okay. So reducing waste helps us, it cuts down on the amount of materials that we need to send to the landfill or to the incinerator, which aren't sustainable, because what you're doing is you're taking a product or material and you're basically destroying it and burying it in the ground forever. Whereas if you recycle something, you can take that material and you can use it over and over again to create new goods, which helps cut down the natural resource costs. It's actually cheaper in the long run to reuse items and recycle materials than to use virgin materials. There's the creation of jobs along the way too. Every time you recycle something, you need somebody to pick up that material. You need someone to take it to the recycling facility to sort it. You need someone to bundle it and package it and to sell it, and then someone to buy it and then create a new product out of it. So all along the way, it's creating jobs and stimulating the economy in that sense.
Okay. How does recycling and reducing waste conserve natural resources?
The biggest thing is saving natural resources by not requiring us to go out and to harvest new natural resources. So if we're reusing paper, rather than going out to a forest and cutting down trees to create new pulp, to create new paper, we take the old paper and we reprocess it into new paper, and that saves the trees. And the same thing goes for like an aluminum can. Rather than going out into the countryside and mining bauxite ore, which is aluminum ore, and then processing it and transporting it across country, we just take that ore, that aluminum that's already been purified and processed, and just melt it down and form it into something new. So reusing these materials helps us. We don't need to go out and harvest new materials or mine new materials.
Okay. How would the environment be affected if recyclable items were not recycled and got thrown away?
The biggest impact would be that those things that got thrown away would end up either going to an incinerator where they'd be burned, and then you'd have to take the ash and put it in a landfill somewhere. Or if they're going directly to a landfill, they would just be shipped there, sent there, and basically sit there for eternity, because things don't really decay in a landfill. And so if everything that we produced was landfilled, we would rapidly run out of places to put things. So by recycling things, we're keeping things out of the landfill, we're saving space. That's one of the big impacts on the environment. If things are thrown away, cat. What was the question? Give me a prompt again.
How would the environment be affected if recyclable items were not recycled and got thrown away?
Okay. Another problem if everything was thrown away would be that the energy, our energy consumption would go way up. Because when we recycle things, to recycle something into a new product takes a lot less energy than to create a new product from virgin materials. And so if every time we needed a new can or plastic bottle or piece of paper, we had to create something from virgin materials, the energy cost of that would be much more than we currently are now when we're recycling. So those are sort of the big impacts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how does litter affect the environment?
Litter has several effects. I mean, the first is the aesthetic value. If you look outside and you see trash everywhere, things just don't look nice, and people start to not appreciate where they live, and the trash tends to keep piling up. There's sort of a monkey see, monkey do. If one person throws their trash away, everyone else says, oh, someone else has done it, I might as well do it myself. So that's one of the effects. Probably the biggest effect is on wildlife. A lot of materials, especially like plastic bags and things like that, when they're blowing around out in the environment, creatures, animals, birds, fish, things like that, sometimes mistake them for food and will try to eat them. Or birds a lot of times can get wrapped up in plastic wires or plastic strings, or like the 6-pack holders and things like that. The same with fish. So, I mean, the biggest thing is it looks awful, it's dangerous to wildlife, and then litter also, just as it starts to break down, there are sometimes chemicals in the paper or the plastic bottle or whatever that break down, and when they break down in the environment, they could be toxic to wildlife.
Okay. Is that all? Okay, what are the negative effects of recyclable items getting into the rivers and streams and eventually the oceans?
The major negative effects are the impacts they have on fish and wildlife, and wildlife. Blooper. We'll start that again.
Okay.
I don't even remember. Oh, so the
Wait, hold on, your mic just like. Can
you know,
again? Technical difficulties.
this thing on?
Yes.
Hello.
Okay, just like put it down and then see. Yeah, that hurts. Okay, say something. I'm giving up on you. Just say something.
Something.
Okay, move it up a little. Sorry. Okay, now say something.
Something.
Okay. Now say something.
Now say something.
Okay,
Okay.
I think I can hear you.
I think I can hear you.
Okay.
All right.
Should I start again?
No.
This is going.
No, I mean they're recording.
This is going great. Okay.
And we're going. We're fine.
Wait. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay. Want me to read the question again?
Sure.
Okay. What are the negative effects of recyclable items getting into the rivers and streams and eventually the ocean?
The major negative effects are the impacts that it has on fish and wildlife. Plastics, especially, are persistent in the environment, so they'll float downstream and they'll go into the Chesapeake and then eventually onto the ocean. And along the way, fish, sea turtles, once it's out in the ocean, will see a plastic bag and they'll think it's food or a jellyfish or something, and they'll try to eat it and they'll swallow it and it'll cause problems that could even kill them. Plastic 6-pack holders are also very dangerous. Waterfowl oftentimes will get tied up in those, get a beak or a leg or a wing stuck in those. Plastics are primarily the most dangerous things as far as impacting our rivers and streams. That's why actually the county has banned plastic bags, or has put on what people are calling the bag tax, where if you get a plastic bag when you go out shopping, you have to pay a 5 cent tax, and a 5-cent tax. And the major reason for that was its impacts on wildlife and fish and streams, fish and wildlife in streams and rivers and the ocean, in the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay. What is bad about sending recyclable items to landfills and incinerators?
It's bad because it's a waste, because you're taking materials that can be used again and in some cases again and again and again and again indefinitely, and you're basically just throwing it away and for them to be never used ever again. Steel, for instance, any kind of metal, anything like any metal can be recycled over and over and over again. There's no limit on the number of times it can be recycled. So if you take a steel can or an aluminum can or a copper wire and you throw it in a landfill, you've basically just taken that out of circulation. It'll sit there forever. Plastic and paper can be reused a finite amount of times, but you're still, if you throw it away after one use, then you're basically cutting down on its usefulness and wasting it, basically.
How does recycling save energy and reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
The major way that saves energy is because taking an item and recycling it, processing it, melting it down, and making it into a new item consumes less energy than, for instance, if you were talking about aluminum can. The energy it takes to produce aluminum, you have to go out to the mine the ore, process the ore, transport the ore. Then once you refine it into aluminum, then you need to ship it to a factory where it's made into an aluminum can. When you recycle something, you cut out all those first steps. You cut out all the processing and harvesting, and you basically are taking the aluminum and just melting it down again and making something new of it. So there's a statistic we like to use all the time that the energy saved by recycling one aluminum can, it saves enough electricity to power your television set for 3 hours. So for every aluminum can of soda that you recycle, the electricity there will let you watch TV for an hour.
Wow. What materials can we recycle here in Montgomery County?
Here in Montgomery County, it's actually sometimes easier to list the materials that you can't recycle. We've expanded our recycling program a lot over the last 5 to 10 years. There are 5 types of material that everyone has to recycle. We have a regulation, it's called Executive Regulation 1504 AM, and that requires that everyone who lives and works in Montgomery County has to recycle commingled materials, which are your aluminum cans, your plastic bottles, your glass bottles and jars, aluminum foil, and that's about it for that. Then mixed paper, which is basically your cardboard, your box board, your clean, your junk mail, basically any clean, dry paper. You're also required to recycle scrap metal, which is any item that's predominantly metal. So refrigerators, stoves, even things like wire hangers. We're also required to recycle our yard trim, which is our grass clippings, our leaves, our brush, garden trimmings, prunings from your bushes and trees. And then the final item are Christmas trees, live Christmas trees. So if you have a live Christmas tree, you're required to recycle that too. So those are things that everybody has to recycle by law, but there's so much more that you can recycle. And at our transfer station, we have set up different stations for all sorts of materials. You can bring your used motor oil. You can bring your used cooking oil. You can recycle clothing and textiles, your electronics, your television sets, your computers, your iPhones and things like that you don't need anymore. There's also books recycling, bicycle recycling, and then we also have scrap metal there too. So basically, almost everything can be recycled here in the county. There are very few things that can't, primarily food waste, and then some plastics and things like that.
Should I cut it?
You can keep going, I don't care.
Okay. Go ahead and
If I
let
take
him
a
take a drink. Can I move this up? I'm gonna zoom in a little.